of all, I want to thank every single one of you for coming out. This is very important. This is very vital. Black lives have always mattered. We have always been important. We have always meant something. We have always succeeded. Regardless.
What? I can't hear it. I can never hear anything you do on your side.
I ain't waiting. I have been born in this country. I'm 28 years old, born and raised in London. And for time, every black person understands and realizes the first time you were reminded that you were black. You remember, every black person in here remembered when another person reminded you that you were black. So none of you out there, all those protesters on the other side, protesting against what we want to do, protesting against what we want to try and achieve.
If I sit back like this, there's no shadow.
This is so vital.
No, not at all.
Sit down. Guys, we can sit down. If you can sit down.
How much longer?
Sit down.
Okay, I was going to change shirts. I think it might be that I usually...
I need you guys to understand.
I usually wear a lighter shirt. 1 second.
I need you to understand how painful it is to be reminded every day that your race means nothing. And that isn't the case anymore. That is never the case anymore. We are going to try today. We are a physical representation of our support for George Floyd.
Bang on them. Bang on them. Bang on them.
We are a physical representation on our support for Sandra Bland.
Bang on them.
We are a physical representation on our support for Trayvon Martin. We are a physical representation of our support for Stephen Lawrence.
All right, that helped a little.
For Mark Duggan. It is very, very important that we keep control in this moment and we make this as peaceful as possible.
What's up, everybody? That's different way to start the show, but different times.
Yeah, it's been a week.
Yeah.
I'm Travis Hobson, PunchDrunkCritics.com. That is John Nolan of PunchDrunkCritics.com. And I think it was a totally appropriate way.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
Given the way things have been over the last week or so.
Absolutely. I mean, and for those who didn't recognize it, that was John Boyega in a protest speech he gave in London. And, you know, one of the things we'll talk about today is how Hollywood's responding to this. And one of the best things I saw was, you know, he said in his speech, it wasn't in the clip we played there, but he said, I'm probably going to lose my career over this, which would have been true probably 10, 15 years ago even. But almost immediately, everybody from Charlie Brooker of Black Mirror to everybody, Lucasfilm, everybody else came out to support him and said, we got you. So there was a lot of support behind him for that, and rightfully so. I'm still impressed. I mean, John Boyega is not going to be the topic of our show, but I didn't know. He's got the heart of a revolutionary, doesn't he? I mean, obviously you've seen that video.
He's never been one to keep quiet, and right. Going back to The Last Jedi, to The Rise of Skywalker, and not just comments about the movies themselves, which he's been eager to defend.
Right.
But the reaction to both films, because both those movies were met with a lot of toxic fandom that really went after them for their treatment of women. I mean, for having women in lead roles, and so a lot of people were attacking Daisy Ridley, and people were attacking Kelly Marie Tran, drove her off of social media. He's kind of come to their defense. He's never been somebody who's been shy about saying what's on his mind, and which it doesn't surprise me that he came out and did something like this, attending a protest out there in London in support of Black Lives Matter and against police brutality and racism. That doesn't surprise me. In fact, I'm damn proud of him for doing it. Oops, just knocked over my camera. Okay. That doesn't surprise me. But I do have appreciation for his comments, though. I mean, you said 10, 15 years ago. I don't even think it would have been that long ago that he would probably find himself not necessarily out of a job, but maybe put on a list.
Well, and this is one of the reasons that you and I talked before the show about addressing some of these subjects on the show. Is a lot of this stuff comes down to communication, and that right there is a perfect example of how I just don't get it, and I can't get it. You know what I mean? Like in the speech, he talks about everybody remembers the first time that they were identified as black, or the first time that they were prejudiced against because they were black or whatever like that. And that's just, I mean, it's not something that I've ever encountered. And so it's not something I can know. So it's important to realize and admit what you don't know so you can learn.
It's relevant and meaningful because he's not somebody who goes around unnoticed.
Right.
Like he's a celebrity, he's famous, and it doesn't really matter when it comes to systemic racism. It doesn't really matter whether you're famous or not. Mm-hmm. People we get profiled all the time, and I definitely know where he's coming from when you talk about that moment when you kind of realize that people perceive you differently, not because of something you've done or something like that, but because of just how you look. And I think for a lot of us, and this, I think this is true for almost any profession or any organized profession. If you're black, there comes a moment where you kind of realize that people are going to look at you a different kind of way because of what you are, because of who you are. And even in film criticism, I've experienced it. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time now, so have you. And I've had my moments. I've talked about my early experiences going to Sundance, which before they started becoming more diverse, there were no black people there hardly. Mm-hmm. And you get that feeling of walking into a room full of all white journalists and all white press people and all white celebs and getting that look like, are you in the right room? And, and you kind of have to you feel like you kind of have to prove yourself. Yeah, I am here and I do belong here. And you get that feeling, and it's a feeling I've had quite a bit. And I think I'm sure I'm not the only one who's had that feeling. And it's like that. It's like that in movies. It's like that in sports. It's like that everywhere for black people who have to prove themselves that they belong, just because of their skin. It's just ridiculous. And it's the world we live in now. And I don't know. I'm trying to be optimistic that this whole week, following on the murder of George Floyd, which has sparked off a week of protests all around the world. I asked a friend the other day, I was like, when was the last time you went out and protested for the death of somebody in Korea?
Right.
It's like the answer is probably never, and I guarantee you it's never. But people are protesting around the world over the death of George Floyd, which goes to show you the impact of what's going on.
Real quick, not to interrupt, can you hear me? Okay, so you can hear me. Is my video moving on your side? Because it's frozen over here for me.
You're frozen.
Okay, well, that's a perfect freeze. Thank you, Zoom.
It is a terrible freeze.
Yeah.
Now that I've expanded it and I'm looking at it, that's a really bad freeze.
Yeah.
You know what though? I want to. Can I take a snapshot of that?
I don't want you to because I was listening to what you were saying, but now it looks like I'm bored on it.
I got the screenshot. I got the screenshot.
Son of a bitch. That's going to get posted everywhere. I know Travis too well. It's probably already on Facebook.
It's going up there soon. I don't want to risk messing up the meeting, but
yeah,
it will definitely be up soon.
There we go. That's good. Let's start this again. There we go. Hey, I'm back.
All right, there you are.
Jesus Christ. Sorry, I really didn't want to interrupt you, especially what you're talking about. But I was like, this. Not only am I frozen, but it looks like I'm really bored, and that's not the case at all. So I didn't want the wrong message to get out there. Oh man,
that's great. I was hoping I could pop up the picture on here somehow, but I don't think I can.
I have a feeling I'll be seeing that picture quite a bit in the future. So, thank you for that.
If I could turn it into a GIF, I would, but I won't know how.
So when I broke in there, you were talking about what it's been like to be a film critic of color throughout the years, and you of all the places to do it, DC, I have to imagine, is one of the better better arenas to enter into it in. Is that something like what's it been? And this is kind of going down a different road, but just out of my curiosity, I know there's some folks in New York and Chicago that I've talked to, but what's the representation like when you go to these festivals when you're outside the DC area?
Yeah, it's gotten better. It's gotten better lately. Mm-hmm. It didn't used to be, like I said, it didn't used to be that way. I used to always feel like I was the lone man out there sometimes. And but yeah, in DC it's actually pretty diverse now. It wasn't always that way in DC either. But that's because the our profession wasn't diverse. It just wasn't. And we weren't, and also our profession was mostly focused on people who worked at newspapers and magazines. It's not like that anymore. Right. So that whole dynamic has changed. But it's different for Black film critics, and I've never been one of those guys who's labeled himself a Black film critic. Like I've never really seen myself that way. I'm not like my buddy Wilson Morales who runs Black Film, or our friend Tim Gordon who runs the Black Reel Awards and Film Gordon, and they put emphasis on projects that tell the Black story. I've never been that guy. I've never really been that guy. But there are certain points when you realize you're kind of just you are that guy, whether you want to be or not. Right. Like you just are, and it's as somebody who is very political and is not afraid to put in his opinions in stories about movies and entertainment, and to tweet about them, and even occasionally go on radio to talk about politics. It's interesting to kind of see how those worlds meet together.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a very trying week. I've kind of like found myself like, because me, I'm doing this kind of crap all day, but you wake up and it's like, man, I just don't. It's hard to take this stuff seriously when you got this other stuff going on in the world. Nobody's ever going to know. At least I hope you'll never know what it's like, and a lot of people are never going to know what it's like to wake up in a place where your people you can be killed for who you are.
Yeah, I mean,
you're never going to know that feeling of waking up in the morning and knowing that the most powerful person in the world hates you. Mm-hmm. That feeling doesn't go. It settles into your chest. It makes you not want to do much. Makes you not want to do things. But what I was heartened by the reaction, not only just around the world, but from our chosen profession, from Hollywood and journalism, entertainment journalism. A lot of them went and participated on Tuesday for Blackout Tuesday. Which, if you somehow missed what Blackout Tuesday was basically a day in which Black entertainers and other major movers of culture kind of shut down.
Right.
And, in response to the murder of George Floyd, and to just kind of say, we need to stop and take stock and show our impact, show our might by not being there. And I did not necessarily agree with Blackout Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Others were like Collider and Slash Film were taking the total day off, just not doing anything at all. I had posted on Twitter that I wasn't going to be doing that for our site, because to me, staying silent is exactly what those people who hate us want us to do. So I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Whether or not I'm talking politics that day or not, they'd rather not have my voice out there at all. So I decided I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep the site open and doing what we normally do. Now, the fortunate side effect of everybody not doing much that day was that I didn't have that much to do that day either. It was almost like a day off anyway.
Forced retirement.
But Blackout Tuesday was a thing, and it was. I think it was. It was. I think its message got a little bit muddled. A lot of people jumped in. There's a lot of mixed messages going on between Blackout Tuesday and Black Lives Matter, and it got a little confused. But I'm happy that people did something as a first step. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm hoping that maybe not do it this way if they decide to do something like this again, but to do it in a different way and expound on it and turn it into something else. Good idea that maybe didn't execute as well as it should have. But I just didn't feel like it was a good idea to be quiet.
Yeah, what you're saying makes 110% sense. I mean, I understand the thought process, similar to it was like Monday without an immigrant or something like that did a couple of years ago. But yeah, I mean, in this context, saying silent is probably not the best thing. But I think one of the important things about what's going on now and what we're seeing, this is obviously nothing new. I mean, I don't even want to know what was going on in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s before camera phones. Really huge quote that I saw that really resonated with me was, just imagine how much this was happening before everything was being recorded.
Trust me, you have plenty of people out there, and I've had conversations with them who pretend that this whole thing started the day somebody invented video cameras.
They think they weren't doing this before?
Or camera phones. Like, this is like police brutality. It started with the invention of like video cameras. Like Rodney King was like the first time it ever happened.
Well, yeah,
it's like that. There are legitimate people. There are people who actually think that's true, and it's absurd. Of course, it's ridiculous. But
I think that's inaccurate for one reason, and that's that the people you're referring to don't actually have the ability to think. There's one of them like your what's the fat dude conspiracy theorist guy, Alex Jones or whatever.
Oh yeah.
You got one of them that has a slight capacity to think, and then everybody else is just parroting what they hear. But that's neither here nor there. I think that the most important thing about all this is that, and it's very sad it took to get to this point, but we do, at least I feel, seem to be there where everybody, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, everybody that was sitting by and saying, man, this is really awful, I'm sure they'll do something about it now, is now of the mindset that this is on us to do. They're not going to do anything, and nothing's going to change. And
yeah, it's not enough, and this has been a statement that's gone around a lot lately, and I agree with it 100%. It's not enough to just be not racist. Like I know a lot of people who just say I'm not racist. Yeah, it's fine, but you have to be anti-racist.
Right.
You got to be like against. You got to be fighting actively against the racism that's out there. And it's doubly annoying to wake up today and find out that somebody in the administration is like, there's no such thing as systemic racism, or I don't believe there's systemic racism. That's the kind of thing you deal with. That's when I said that, you never know what it's like to grow up and have the most powerful person in the world. Know that person hates you, and know that if you were to die in the same way that George Floyd was killed, he's going to come out there the next day and use your name to pump himself up.
Right.
Over some fucking employment numbers or something stupid. He's going to call the most racist person in the White House is going to call your name out and use you as a talking point for himself. And that's the kind of humiliation that Black people deal with. And that's the reason why people are out there in the streets, is for stuff like that. It's not just George Floyd's murder has sparked this, but it was not. I mean, this is not the only thing. It's grown beyond just him now. It's like people continue to protest in the streets in bigger numbers now than they were 7 days ago.
Right. I mean, there were two events.
This is just part one. This is just like just one thing. But there's so much more, and it's going. I think it's going to be this way for a long time. I think until we'll see.
One thing I think this will do, or something I'm seeing turning, and I had already been past that corner of understanding, because I will freely admit that I didn't believe in the term white privilege gets dropped all the time, and I think it's confused with people what that means, because people will think, well, I have trouble too, I don't have a lot of money, I don't have this, how do I have privilege? Well, and I'm hesitating to even say this.
The term is inconvenient because if you want to be somebody who ignores the situation, that term almost gives you the ability to do it.
Right.
Like
because
it's because people say, oh well, I'm not privileged. My family has struggled too. I've faced unemployment, or I've not gotten a job I wanted, or whatever. Like, I'm struggling. I'm not rich, and that so people take the term privilege. They look at it almost exclusively through the veil of like finances and like career and stuff like that. But it's more than that. It's your privilege is that you never have to walk into an appointment or into a job application and wonder if, you know, your skin is going to prevent you from getting a job, right. or walking into a store and being followed because you're Black, or walk into a room full of people, like I said, with the film critics and film journalists, and walk into a room and have them wonder if you belong there because you're Black. Like, you don't that's the kind of thing that white people don't have to worry about. They don't have to worry about whether or not they're going to get killed in the street by a cop, and then that cop's just going to go home.
Right.
Or worse, be chased down the street by three people in a truck who then attack you and shoot you, and then just go home and sit at home for 3 months before anybody says anything about it.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that a white person does not have to worry about happening.
Yeah.
But that's your privilege. That's the privilege that you have. You have that privilege of not having to worry about whether or not being white is going to hurt you from getting something. It's not the case.
It's on a micro and macro level. I mean, I've been very lucky that I'm trying to.
Right, white boy. You're right, white boy. You are lucky.
I'm trying to be careful, because anybody that's listened to this show knows that I can't put words together. So let me get this out before anybody judge me. But
go ahead, man.
Because it's going to sound like one of those I have.
You're amongst friends here. You're okay, man. I know even if you say something.
No, I know you do.
By accident, I know your intentions.
Yeah, I know you do. I'm worried about everybody else out there. But my brother-in-law is African American, and he's been a huge part of my life since I was 10. And he's been with my sister ever since. And I didn't get the actual danger until he sat down and explained it to me, because he works nights in Capitol Heights up here, which is not the greatest area in the DC area. We were talking about one day, and I think he got pulled over or something like that, and I was like, well, you didn't get a ticket or anything. What's the big deal? He's like, it's the stress of getting pulled over at night, because he works in like stocking and stuff. So he's not wearing a suit. He's wearing sweatshirt or whatever, which makes a difference. And that unfortunately it does. And having him explain it to me, that was a huge help for me to understand. But the other thing, it's the stupidest fucking thing in the world. But I was walking with Angela, my wife, she's Puerto Rican. And we're leaving a Best Buy or something. We have been together like 3 months at this point. And as I'm walking out the door, the alarm beeps off. And I'm just keep walking out the door, and she stops dead in her tracks, looking around, waiting for somebody to come up to her. And I know that sounds stupid, and it's on a micro and macro level, but that's the little thing. Somebody sees generic white boy walking out the door, like, oh no, he didn't steal anything. But that's the ridiculousness of all of this. I mean,
It is. No, you're right.
I mean, the fact that I have to worry about my nieces and nephews growing up to deal with this crap. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's hard, man. It's hard. And like I said, it's been interesting to see sort of the reactions to it. Hollywood has come out and they've done little things, which I've really appreciated, like making a lot of movies that are about injustice or made by Black filmmakers. And a lot of them have been making those movies free for the entire month or for longer. Like Just Mercy is probably the biggest one. Just Mercy is made available on digital for anybody who wants to watch it. That's the film with Michael B. Jordan, Jamie Foxx, and Brie Larson, about Brian Stevenson, the guy who started, I can't remember the name of his foundation that helps people who've been falsely accused of
Not the Amnesty. What is that called?
It's not Amnesty International, or it might have been the Equality.
No, it's something project or something.
It might have been the Equality Project, but I can't remember for sure. That film, which is, because his firm is mostly about helping people who've been accused of crimes, falsely accused of crimes, largely due to race. That movie's made available documentaries like the Black Power mixtape, and the other one about
Selma, which we have up here right now.
We have a bunch of them. Yeah, Selma has been made free by Paramount. It was Paramount. Although the Selma thing is interesting because David Oyelowo was talking about Selma and the Oscars, and he was talking about, and I remember this year. I remember that year very well because that was the year that we had that the BFCA, the Broadcast Film Critics Association, now known as the Critics' Choice Association. I think that's what our name is now. That we had the celebration of Black film. So I remember that year very well, and I went out to the big party that they had that year for it, and it was the Selma year. And he made a comment on Twitter. He made a comment during an interview, and it just kind of blew up on Twitter, but about how the Academy Awards voters snubbed the film. And if you remember, like, Selma was one of the most acclaimed movies of that year.
Oh yeah.
David Oyelowo's performance as Martin Luther King Jr. is amazing to this day. It's just incredible. Mm-hmm. I think it stands up there with Denzel and Malcolm X. I think it's that good. And it went. It didn't get a nomination. In fact, the only nominations that movie got were for Best Original Song, and it got a Best Picture nom. Which I remember even that year, I felt like they did that because they felt they needed to. Like they didn't feel like it never felt like it had a chance.
Right.
And I knew that it felt like it was just thrown in there because of the lack of nominations it got everywhere else. So I was like, okay. I was like, they couldn't possibly make a list of 10 movies and then not have Selma in it, because that would have been too overt. And
now I'm wishing I brought up the list of other nominees. Watch Selma, number one. I think a lot of people didn't see it, but watch Selma. Oyelowo is amazing in it. And if you look right above me, my finger didn't show up. Right above me, you can tell from a still. It's a still of him giving a speech as Martin Luther King Jr. And you can tell from the still how much he embodies that man. His posture, his everything.
Great performance. Mm-hmm. Great performance. Ava DuVernay probably should have been nominated for Best Director. Probably should have been a screenplay nod in there as well. There's a lot of stuff the film should have got. But it only got those 2 nominations. And Oyelowo said they were snubbed by the Academy voters because the cast and crew had worn "I Can't Breathe" t-shirts. Mm-hmm. If you remember the famous image of them wearing the "I Can't Breathe" t-shirt.
Right.
Well, 2014, that was the same year that Eric Garner had been choked to death. And his words echoing now, because those are the words "I can't breathe" are the last words said by George Floyd this week.
Which tells you something. If two people can have the same last words in police custody, then.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing how these things echo. Mm-hmm. But they had worn those shirts, and the Academy did not like it. They didn't like it. They thought it was being too political. They penalized the film for that. And it just goes to show the kind of thinking that the Hollywood media, Hollywood press had, mm-hmm. or the Hollywood elites had at that time. And the Academy has diversified since then, but it's amazing that that's the kind of thinking that there was, that they weren't political. Mm-hmm. So now we're going to hold we're not going to give their movie the credit it probably deserved.
Right.
That kind of thinking is incredible to consider nowadays. It's also the kind of thinking that leads to a movie and it's a movie that I like, but it shouldn't be a Best Picture winner, and that's Green Book. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of thinking that allows for a movie like Green Book to win Best Picture. Right. Because it's those inoffensive movies, the feel-good movie that kind of dabbles with race, mm-hmm. and all sorts of stuff like that, but doesn't really confront it in a way that's realistic.
Right.
It's like that kind of movie, yeah, okay, that movie's acceptable. But a movie that challenges issues of race and things like that, which Selma did, because one of the things that Selma does that makes it so good is that it's not that it's necessarily like put into like modern times, but it's in modern context. So like people talk about how some like the speeches he gave in that movie aren't like the speeches he gave in real life. Well, they're put into kind of modern context.
Right.
So that's why that movie was so challenging and it hit people so hard. It's kind of like what Spike Lee did with BlacKkKlansman.
Mm-hmm.
I think BlacKkKlansman shows how much things have changed for the Academy.
Well, is my timeline correct that the Selma getting snubbed, that was one of the things that kind of led to Oscars So White, right? Which incited the change that we've.
It's around the same time period, yeah. It's around the same time period, yeah. So yeah,
I gotta turn one of these lights off. I'm sorry, I gotta turn one of these lights off. I'm all white. Go, keep going. I'll be right there.
So it's that kind of thinking that leads to a movie like Green Book, an inoffensive film getting Best Picture. A movie like The Help, which ironically this week, The Help has surged in popularity on digital, and which is funny. And Green Book, The Help, two inoffensive movies that deal with race.
With the Great White Savior in both of them.
What's that?
With the Great White Savior in both of them.
Pretty much, yes, exactly. And that's exactly true. They do both have the white savior trope in there, but people have been on social media like fixing The Help for people, like offering all these alternatives to The Help. It's like, watch this instead, please. Right. And look, I think The Help is a good movie too. Like, I think Green Book is a good movie. Those are fine movies. I like them both. In fact, I gave Green Book fairly high in my vote for the year. But
you can't stay comfortable. You can't learn from a comfortable place.
Right. And then would I ever have made it like my Best Picture of the year? No, I wouldn't have done that. But it's social media always wins. So if somebody does, so stuff like this happens, social media is always going to come correct.
Right. God bless Twitter.
Oh man, it's crazy, man. It's been a rough week.
Yeah,
it's been a rough week, but like I said, I've been heartened by some of the stuff that's been going on.
Well, I mean, that's the silver lining that comes in everything, and it's something else I just want to address quickly, and we can go into one of the other things that my mind's changed on is, I've never been the police are 100% right all the time, but I've always been a supporter of law enforcement. I will always be, but you can support something while putting out what's wrong with it. Now, I understand the arguments people say, well, 9 out of 10 top cops are good. It's 1 out of 10. And here's the problem with that. Everybody knows the police department, like any other fire department or anything else, it's a brotherhood. And you need not protect your brothers that are doing you wrong. When they're out there and they're giving you a bad name, and the thing is, you swore an oath to uphold the law. It doesn't say you swore an oath to uphold the law against citizens and not other police people. There's a quote that I should really not say where I initially heard it, but it's always been one of my favorites. And it was in the beginning of Boondock Saints, but it applies here, and that's just the only thing necessary.
Any chance you can to bring up Boondock Saints.
No, it's relevant. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. So if you're telling me 9 out of 10 officers are good, I'm telling you, if they're not standing up and calling out the ones that are doing bad, or arresting the ones that are doing bad, or speaking up and standing up for what's right, then that puts them in the same territory.
Well, what's the saying is, 9 out of 10 bad officers or 9 out of 10 officers are bad, and the other one says nothing. What have you got? 10 bad officers.
Right. Exactly.
So people always people always look for the easy way to explain things away. So they always use it's just a few bad apples line. They use it all the time. They never say like the full quote, which is like the few bad apples spoils the barrel.
I saw that in the article this morning.
Right.
Somebody made that
That's the
same.
full thing. No one ever says the full thing. Like this, they
Right.
just say the first part. Because it's easy, right?
Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah.
So you leave out the part that matters, which is the second part of it.
Yeah.
But if you don't say anything, if the people, look, there have been millions of movies at this point probably about bad cops. You could probably just do like a David Ayer marathon of
Right.
like movies about bad cops, right? And
Yeah.
and cops who sit around and do nothing about it while bad cops go off and do their thing.
Yeah.
But it's true though. If cops don't say anything or do anything, then they're as much a part of the problem. And I've been happy to see in the last few days a lot of some departments are starting to take like real movement on that. Like if you see a cop, I think it's in Minneapolis actually, where they're doing that. If you see cops using a chokehold or something like that, then you don't report it, then you're going to be found as guilty as they are, like as if you had done it yourself. Like stuff like that. Those are the kinds of little changes that need to be made, but it's just a start.
And by the way, those aren't changes. Those are things that are laws right now for civilians. We just need to hold them to the same standard. I mean, if you tell me you're going to go shoot somebody and I don't do anything about it, I can be held as an accomplice. That's basic law. I mean, I understand. And the other thing that we should point out is there's no illusion in my mind that that's an easy thing for anybody to do. I mean, I've never been in a room with 10 people that are supposed to protect me on the street when something bad might happen and have to stand up and break the trust of all of them, but it has to happen.
It has to happen. It's interesting. Spike Lee has been he's been like the most productive person in quarantine.
Yeah.
Over the last couple months. Yeah. I mean, like he did the thing for the pandemic where he did the short film of New York and New York during quarantine and how it's been and what it's been like for him to see his city under lockdown. Yeah, I know. So that was a great little short. And he did another one this week that shows the parallels and between the death of George Floyd and the death of Radio Raheem and Do the Right Thing, and how these things are like, I mean, they're practically identical in some ways. It's the same thing. It's just like, you kill the black guy, you choke out the black guy, and people are wondering, well, why are people protesting? And it just goes to show that, because that movie was 1985, and it's just 35 years later. Is it 35 years? Or is it 25 years? My math sucks. 25 years. Yeah. No, it's 35 years. It's 35 years. Yeah, we suck. Years later, and that movie is just as relevant today as it was back then. And back then, people didn't understand that scene. A lot of people didn't understand that scene. They didn't understand. They thought it was inflammatory. It's not inflammatory. It's reality. It's reality for a lot of people. Just because you don't see it in your life doesn't mean it's not reality for other people. And nowadays, that reality, it's out there for everyone to see. Like there's no hiding from it anymore. It's taken a lot of years to get there. But if you're denying it now, that's because you're denying it willingly. It's willful. But it's amazing the parallels between that scene, the murder of Radio Raheem in that film, and God, I remember the first time I saw that, and I was like, it killed me. It killed me, and it's as powerful today as it was back then. Your sound is out. I hear you now, but you sound weird. I was like, John's being unusually quiet. I was like, oh, that would have been the perfect time to put up that snapshot of you just. I'm going to change your avatar so that the avatar now is that picture of you. So every time when you post stuff, I'm going to make sure it's that. It's going to have that picture. Your sound is out again. It's gone. Well, I mean, look, it's. You got it figured out? Okay. Well, you sound pretty lousy. So let's start to wind this down anyway. We're almost 45 minutes in, and we were going to do a show where we talked about the normal stuff. We had a couple reviews. John is running around over there in the corner now, and it looks funny. The movie Shirley with Elizabeth Moss as horror author. Horror. It sounded like I said horror author.
It did.
Horror author. I can never pronounce
horror
the word
author.
Horror very well.
Horror.
Shirley Jackson. And I'd seen it at Sundance. Fantastic film. It's twisted. It's creepy. It's vile at times. It's Elizabeth Moss when she's being evil. I think she's at her best. It's almost as good as when she's being like traumatized,
which
like
is weird.
Like in The Invisible Man. She's just great at those kinds of roles. But she's manipulative and cruel, and she's fantastic, and it's a lot of fun. I did interviews for that movie with Odessa Young and Josephine Decker, which you can find on the website as well. If you're already subscribed to Cinema Royale, you should already have them. You should check out those because they're two great interviews. I also saw Judy and Punch with Mia Wasikowska and Damon Herriman, which is another really weird offbeat role for Mia Wasikowska, which I think she's fantastic at. It's just sort of her thing, and she's really good at it.
You can't say horror author, but you can say Wasikowska, just like
I say Wasikowska. I say Wasikowska, easy.
Wasikowska.
I saw Becky. Which did you get to watch that?
Mm-mm.
You didn't get to watch Becky. You need to find that and watch it.
All right.
That's the film with Kevin James where he plays a neo-Nazi.
Yeah, I did hear. I didn't see it, but I've definitely heard about it.
Yeah, you need to watch that. That's a John Nolan movie, I think.
Come on now, that just sends the wrong message to everybody out there.
not because you like neo-Nazis, but because it's a violent B movie sort of thing. That's what I mean by
it. That's me.
Basically, he plays a neo-Nazi who breaks into this family home to find something that this teenage girl has made away with. So he attacks her family. Basically, it's sort of like a really, really fucked up version of Home Alone in some ways. It's really messed up, but it's really gruesome at times too. Like really gruesome and over the top.
I mean, he's a big goofball, but people forget that he's like 6'7" and 350 pounds.
He can be intimidating, if he wants to be. He can be. He's never called on to do it. Mm-hmm. He'd rather use his size for humor.
Well, he had that one MMA movie, but no, not that one either.
I don't even remember that movie.
You don't remember that? He was like a school teacher or a gym teacher, and he took up MMA to save the gymnasium or something like that. I don't know.
What the hell was that movie?
It was in between Paul Blarts, I believe.
What the hell was that movie? I don't remember it.
You don't remember it all? All right, let's
No. I remember it, but I don't remember the name now.
Let's see. Here Comes the Boom.
Here Comes the Boom. Jeez. I don't know about that one. So that's one that's worth checking out.
Right.
As well this week. All the movies this week are worth checking out. You might be able to skip Judy and Punch. I think it's a little bit too weird, a little too Gilliam-esque for some people. I mean, if you like Terry Gilliam, you might like that sort of thing. But I don't think it's going to appeal to everybody. But I would definitely recommend Shirley and Becky, and definitely check out those interviews on the site. But we wanted to spend this show basically not really doing our usual stuff and just sort of talking about what the week has been like, and going through some of that stuff. And I think that's what we've done. And And now I'm tired, so I don't want to get away from that stuff now and play some video games or something.
Yeah.
and turn my brain off. I found myself doing that a lot this week, is turning my brain off and just kind of, I'm just going to.
Hey, man. There's never a point, even if this shit wasn't going on, there's never a time in today's world where we have stuff coming at us, good or bad, from 5,000 angles, 200 times a minute that shutting your brain off is a bad thing. So.
Yeah. I've gotten I've found myself relying on it more and more lately. So.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a form of meditation, and regardless of what anybody thinks about that stuff, you need to shut down every once in a while to recharge. So.
Yep. Agreed.
The Punch Drunk Critics recommend meditation through video games.
Yes.
That's our G.I. Joe PSA for the day. All right, man. You want to get out of here?
Yeah, let's get out of here. You can find us every day at punchdrunkcritics.com. You can find me on if you're in the DC area, you can find me on WETA channel 26. That is PBS on WETA around town. Follow me on Twitch. I'm on Twitch now. Just look up twitch.tv/punchdrunktrav. I'm on Twitter at punchycritic. The PDC website is at PDC Movies. John is at punchdrunkjohn, but he doesn't really post, so it doesn't really matter.
I retweeted something yesterday.
Did you you retweeted something?
Yes, I did.
Hey, how about that?
They
All
put
right.
up, somebody was playing the Imperial March at the protests every time the cops came around, so I had to retweet it. Oh, man.
That's funny.
And you can check me out if you're, again, in the area, 98.3 and 97.7 The Bay and WMDM Friday mornings at 7 o'clock. So,
yeah.
All
right,
right,
man. Let's get out of here.
All right, man. Good talk.
All right. Talk to you later, man.